was planned. Yeah, we'll just swap it. Okay, is that better? Great, thank you all. So good evening, and thank you all for coming. For those I've not met yet, my name's Connor Reed. I'm your town administrator, and I'm happy to have you all here with us tonight. We're here tonight to share the new FS1 process with you because the proposal from the town last year did not meet our voters' expectations. That was made clear at the ballot box and also in this room 10 months ago. The project was reset and a citizen-led public committee was appointed by the select board to steer the project. Following many months of public meetings by the FS1 steering committee, voters at this May's annual town meeting approved funding for feasibility and schematic design funds for this new FS1 project. But behind all of that process, the core to why we're all here tonight is the reality that the existing status of FS1 is untenable and it cannot continue. And the longer that we wait to act, the costlier the solutions become. Tonight, we'll discuss the new project team, the new approach to tackling the same problem, the new right-sized building program and the 3 sites being considered, and what steps come next for you. After the presentation, the panel on stage will take questions from our residents here tonight with Human Services Director Danielle Sutton moderating the evening. Joining me on stage tonight are members of our FS1 project team. That includes Fire Chief Stephen Lund, FS1 Committee Chair and Vice Chair Ford Spalding and Jody Petroselli, Walter Hartley from Owners Project Managers PMA Consultants, and Greg Joint on behalf of Castle Booze Associates, who are the new designers for FS1. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the members of the FS1 Steering Committee who are sitting in front tonight, members of our Select Board who are here tonight, our department heads, the firefighters of Westwood, and of course, all of you for giving us some of your time for this important conversation. Before we talk about the new project, we need to address the old problem. And that is that the existing FS1, originally constructed in 1948, when Westwood had an all-male volunteer fire department that did not provide ambulance services, is well past its useful life and is simply beginning to fail. Our first responders are making the best of a temporary tent that is located on High Street, but this is neither a long-term fix nor safe in the long run for the fire department operations. So I'm going to invite Chief Lund up to the podium to discuss a little bit with you what it's like for our firefighters operating out of this station. Chief?
Thank you, Connor. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. It's an extremely important project for us. We've talked about the existing conditions at Station 1 for a couple of years now. I think everybody understands that the condition it's far outlived its useful life. The engineer has told us we can no longer park fire apparatus on there. We have a car in there and a brush truck that are small, but everything else has to be outside in the tent. There is no fix for the floor unless we totally tore it out and replaced it. The living quarters and living area and office space is inadequate at best. You're all familiar with those problems. I'm not going to continue on that. But what I do want to address is the tent. We've been hearing that people think that we've fixed the problem and that the tent is a good solution. Well, the tent is only a temporary Band-Aid. It was not designed specifically for this. It was a stock unit that we purchased in an emergency. It is functioning right now, but is not long-term solution, and it's only permitted for 3 years. I want to address some of the issues that we're having in the tent. So I'll show you a video of this handsome guy. With the traffic, when we pull out, I have firefighters get out, stop traffic. We activate the lights. But even with those measures, we still have people driving through, people blocking the box. We have to block the box out there. And then I have a couple of videos of near misses. One of them, there's engine 5 is returning and it's blocking both lanes. And a car, actually 2 cars, drive by it and almost hit 2 of my firefighters. So it's very unsafe right now. Another concern we have is when it's raining, the water is flowing under the tent across the floor to that side because of the grade. My concern is when it's January, February, and we have melting snow or rain, that they're going to come down in the morning and it's going to be a giant sheet of ice and it'll be a safety hazard. It's extremely tight. We've already ripped off the light off one of the trucks because it's so tight back in, they hit one of the poles. And then we can't put the plywood vent on, which is what gets all the fumes out of the station until the truck is back in all the way because the plywood vent is tight.
We lost the mic again. Can you bring it closer to you?
I think it went out again.
Test. Switch mic.
This one? Okay. All right, I was just saying that, you know, it's very tight in there, and we've hit the pole. I'm not sure if you heard all of that, but, so it's not a great fix. It's done so that we had all of our resources back at Station 1, because when we were running out of Station 2, we had response times that were over 8 minutes to some places, and that could mean the difference between life and death. So, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Chief. Last fall, after the project had failed, a community forum was held in this room. Based on feedback throughout that year and that forum, the Select Board of the town hit reset on the FS1 project. The new FS1 project approach was built from the ground up with citizen engagement and transparency into the decision-making process at its foundation. The new process includes a public feasibility and site selection phase, the competitive rebidding of project managers and designers, with interviews with those firms filmed for the public, ultimately bringing new firms on for both functions, and a steering committee shaping the project in open public meetings. There have been forums and online surveys to gather direct resident feedback. The facility program has been right-sized, reducing the size while maintaining focus on community and firefighter safety, reflecting a focus on essential needs. Additionally, the town is actively working on long-range financial planning for multiple town and school buildings while maximizing the operational use of FS2 in Islington by gradually increasing our fire department staffing over the past 2 fiscal years. All of this is demonstrating the town's commitment to both immediate and future needs for our first responders and the students of Westwood, and that they need not come in competition with one another. There have been, since last fall, more than 50 public meetings, updates, and engagement opportunities relating to the new FS1. Regular public meetings and engagement opportunities are an important foundation for this project, but equally important is the new approach from our new design team, KBA. I'd like to welcome Greg Joint, architect at KBA and project lead for FS1, to discuss his firm's new approach to this project.
Thank you, Connor, and thank you all for joining us tonight for this important project. When we were selected as the designer for the project, we came in knowing the previous project had failed and that there was a high expectation from the town to deliver high value to the community for residents. Looking at the previous project and the needs of the Westwood Fire Department, we reevaluated that 2025 program, so the spaces that need to go into the building. We focused on really flexible and multi-use spaces, so making the best use of all the spaces in the building, making every square foot kind of earn its place within the building. We focused on firefighter operations and firefighter safety, ensuring that your long-term sustainability for your force is maintained and that they're able to do their jobs as healthily as they can. And last, we looked at reducing the administrative and other non-operating spaces where possible. You still need to operate an administrative function in your fire department, but knowing the feedback from the previous project, that was a key part to looking at the program and making efficiencies where we could. That resulted in about a 19% reduction from the previous project. When we look at the previous FS1 project at about 36,700 square feet to our new proposed program of just under 30,000 square feet, a 6,900 square foot reduction is a pretty significant reduction in a building of this size and represents a number of key decisions that were made working with both the department and the FS1 steering committee. To get into a little bit more detail about where those reductions were, apparatus bay was one place we were able to make some reductions by limiting the width of the bays, still being able to maintain the same number of bays, the same number of apparatus that you were expecting, but doing it in much less square footage and being able to deliver that at a lower cost. Staff facilities dropped, command facilities, so that administrative function dropped, and the maintenance bay that is essential for your department's operation also reduced in square footage. Fire department operations actually increased in square footage compared to the FS1. We felt that this is one of the most important portions of the building, and some of this just is a little bit of categorization between a previous project and a new project, but firefighter operations and support is critical for any operations of the facility, making sure that you have proper decon, proper places for the department to store and keep materials safe, and then finally, to be able to train within their facilities is critically important to having an effective firefighting force. Training, meeting rooms stayed about the same. Building services were about the same, and the rest of the categories that make up the building were generally the same. More importantly, some spaces were eliminated. So in terms of bunk rooms, we went from 10 bunk rooms in the previously proposed program to 7. Bathrooms, 13 to 10. Administrative offices, 8 to 4. And a sweat box, which is a kind of a sauna to help firefighters decontaminate, we eliminated. All of those were specific space eliminations that helped in gaining the reduced square footage, but weren't the whole thing. Some spaces were just reduced in size to make sure we could accommodate the building and stay fiscally responsible for the budget. We were charged with looking at 3 sites, and we'll get into those sites right now. 637 High Street is the existing station site. There we are proposing a 3-story building, about that 30,000 square foot number for square footage. The next is the former school on Deerfield Ave. That site, we would take a portion of that with a 2-story building, again, same square footage on that site. And lot 1431, this is commonly referred to in town as the lot that's behind Starbucks. Again, a 2-story building there, about 30,000 square feet. We'll go through just briefly those layouts and what those buildings might look like on a site. I would just note for this purposes, we are designing buildings and in the process of looking at designing buildings on these sites, and we are at the very initial stages. These plans will change as the project develops, but this is the initial step to help the steering committee really decide which site is the best to pursue along with the community and the select board. So first is the existing site. The real strengths of this site is it's an existing location. Folks are familiar with it. It has a civic identity there. We can put a fresh, concept on this site that is right-sized for the town and making sure we can still deliver high-quality emergency response for the town while doing that with temporary operations. So we would have to move the fire department away from this site temporarily, then to come back. Some considerations for this site are those temporary operations are part of the equation to getting this site constructed. The lot size is relatively small, and it has a fair bit of topography. It drops off to the west toward the back of the building, requiring that 3-story solution in this case. As some of you may be familiar with, the previous project required zoning variances, a number of them for this site. We expect that we will still need a number of variances for this site just based on the lot size and the setbacks. You couldn't build the existing building that's there now without variances in this site. It's just kind of part of the process for this site. The proximity to the abutters and High Street and behind the building are also a concern here, making sure we're sensitive to that and provide a good solution for all around. We'll move over to Deerfield Ave. Deerfield Ave, the project proposes looking at a portion of the site to the northwest corner, so behind the existing former school building. The lot would still accommodate 2 softball fields and a multi-sport field across it, so a slight reduction in the overall square footage of fields, but actually an improvement to the fields because the current fields are not regulation size, and in reconstructing those fields, we could actually get at least one of the softball fields, if not both, to an actual regulatory size softball field while still maintaining that multi-sport field across the center. The existing school building would stay until the town made a future plan for that. And that really provides both straightforward response, either out an existing portion of the site that accesses High Street or through the police station lot where there is an existing drive for emergency response, both of which would require new preemption lights that are very similar to the existing site on High Street and really offer a great deal of options here for the site. There are some wetlands on the site, and there is the need to maintain and replicate those fields. There is a potential to dead end Deerfield Ave as part of this proposal to limit the amount of cross traffic through that street and make sure that fire response does not go out Deerfield but only goes out to High Street. I'll move to the last site, so lot 14-131. This is the behind Starbucks lot. This lot is a bit elevated from High Street. It has strong response time coverage, much like the other 3 options. There's an ample amount of room on this site, though the rear of the site to the very east is primarily wetlands. The room is efficient here, so both on Deerfield Ave and on this site, we could likely reduce the number of apparatus bays from 5 to 4. That would, potentially offer a bit more savings than the existing High Street, only because we can access those apparatus bays on both sides to grade, an option that we don't have on the existing site. This is straightforward, as Deerfield is on construction. There is no phasing because it is an unoccupied site. Access to High Street would be through an existing easement with likely some additional taking. There is some steep grades on this site which need to be dealt with in the course of construction. There is some potential soil contamination from the existing gas station that we would need access through. And one of the challenges here is there are a number of accesses to this site through existing easements. There is really one viable primary egress and ingress to this site, and that would be through that easement to the north of the site. So as we look at these 3 options and look at the costs, we've put together kind of an order of magnitude cost. So this is not an estimate. These are not intended to set project budgets. What these costs are to do is to really help the FS1 steering committee compare relevant sites to each other to gain an understanding of not only the physical context of those sites and what could be developed there, but also what the cost implications of that would be. So as we looked at that with PMA, the owner's project manager, the range for the new proposed FS1 would range between a low value of $33.9 million to a high value of $43.7 million. Looking back at the previous FS1 project, that project cost in 2025 was about $41,600,000. If you were to put that project at the same place that we are currently, you would expect that total project cost to be about $44.9 million. So even though we are a little bit out, we're looking to be below the cost of that site. A reduction in program because of inflation and in our industry, escalation is kind of how we refer to it. A 19% drop in program does not automatically equal a 19% reduction in cost. To illustrate just kind of how escalation has been working in construction, we utilized Massachusetts School Building Authority, so the same school building authority that helps fund school projects. They are probably the best source of solid data for construction cost and public projects in Massachusetts. This is the chart that they use to track public construction cost across all school projects in Massachusetts. So if you can see the cost escalation per square foot as you move across the screen, we are in between basically that 2025 and 2028 number. We think that those are reasonable numbers to estimate and responsible for the estimates that we believe would be a resulting bid for a project of this scale and magnitude. With that, I'll turn it back over to Connor to talk about next steps and staying connected.
Thank you, Greg. Quickly, before we finish our prepared remarks and turn it over to you for Q&A, I just want to highlight some key dates for all of you as residents as we move this project forward. So the next 2 weeks are very important for the community and the committee as it prepares to recommend a preferred site for the new FS1. After tonight, there are numerous additional opportunities to learn more about the project and to share your feedback. Next week, the Select Board on Monday is scheduled to vote on ballot language to reserve the FS1 debt exclusions spot on the November 3rd midterm election. The Select Board's vote to do so is a little earlier than is required for a general town election, and that's because state election laws require that to get a local question on a state ballot in November, it needs to be submitted to the state in early August. Next Friday, following these forums, community conversations, and the online survey, the FS1 committee will take all of that feedback along with technical, operational, and financial information to decide on which site to advance. The next 4 months will see continued opportunities for engagement and discussion as the town publicly advances the project into the schematic design phase. From August through the fall, we'll be developing a refined site layout and building concept for the selected site and have professional cost estimators dial in as tight and responsible a budget as possible for voters to consider. You will have a final project scope and budget, including the estimated property tax impact this fall in advance of having to consider your vote. Under state law, any building project funded in part or wholly by debt exclusion funds requires 2 approval votes from a community, both from a town meeting and a corresponding ballot. Finally, if the project is approved this fall at town meeting and the ballot box, we still have quite some time in front of us before the Westwood Fire Department has a new FS1 to call home. Assuming an approval of fall of this year, design and permitting will likely take until summer, with construction starting perhaps a little more than a year from now. It will likely be 2029 by the time construction completes and the fire department can move in. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Human Services Director Sutton to kick off our panel Q&A. And again, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming tonight and sharing your time with us. And we appreciate your attendance and your thoughtfulness. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Connor. Hello, everyone. As Connor said, my name is Danielle Sutton. I'm the Director of Human Services for the town of Westwood, And in that role, I oversee and support the work of the Council on Aging, Library, Recreation, Youth and Family Services, and Veterans Departments. I'm privileged to be here with all of you tonight as we conduct this Q&A period and continue this discussion. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Q&A period and what to expect before we get started. During this time, we hope to hear from as many of you as possible about your thoughts and questions on what you've heard or read tonight, and any other clarifying questions that can help move the conversation forward. Some things to note. I'm going to tell you about the position of the 2 microphones where you can go for questions. Right behind you, at the top of the aisles, there are 2 different microphones, and you can go there to ask questions. If getting to the microphone or waiting in line at the microphone isn't something that you're able to do, you can raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you in your seat. When you get up to the microphone and it's your turn, you're going to start with your name and address each time, even if you've been up before. And each speaker will get 2 minutes to ask their question or questions. And to help with that, something that I plan to do is to hold up a card. So it'll be a green card when you're at the 1-minute mark, halfway through. It will be a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left. And it will be a red card when you've reached your 2 minutes and should close out your question. Something to keep things moving forward and get as many people as possible able to get answers to their questions. We ask that you ask your question or questions fully, even if it's a multi-part question or there are multiple questions. If you say everything you need to say, then the panelists can respond, and that'll keep things moving along. If you've had a chance to speak at the microphone, please give everyone else a chance to speak before returning for additional comment or questions. And lastly, I'll say we all understand that public speaking is not comfortable for everyone. If you have thoughts or questions you'd like to share, but you don't want to do it in this forum, please know that everyone on the stage will be down in front of the stage at the end of tonight and happy to speak with you one-on-one or in small groups. There's also always the option to email the FS1 Steering Committee directly at any time. All right, so at this time, anyone who'd like to ask a question or make a comment can go up to the microphone and do so. All right. I'm going to start over here, and then I'm going to go back and forth. So, sir, if you could please start with your name and address. No. Let's see. It appears not to be on. We have tech support that will help you out. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. All right.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brian Kamaker. I live at 95 University Avenue. I think 2 minutes is really a little short, but I'll do it. I have a few questions and a quick comment. I guess the first question is: it sounds like the design is pretty much settled, with some tweaks here and there, depending on the venue. Second question: given the context of the pantheon of other capital projects, are we going to know how this fits in everything else that we're going to be asked to be paid for in the next few years? So that's the second question. Third question: I understand that there's a 50-year baseline structural lifespan for this project. The current fire station actually lasted about 40 years after the 1975 renewal. Is there a plan for maintenance during that time so that we don't run into problems early? Just a quick comment. the fact that you're starting at the, the place where we rejected earlier and moving down rather than just sort of starting new, it doesn't look right. It would have been better if you just started at the beginning. Am I done, or is there any more?
You have 15 more seconds.
15 more seconds, okay. I've lived here for 9 years. Before I lived here, I lived in Newton, and in the 3 years before I lived here, Newton built 2 new fire stations. Nobody knew anything about it. They just did it. They didn't have a bunch of drama. They didn't have public meetings. They were just simple buildings. It's unsettling that we weren't able to do that here.
Thank you. If you'd like to stay, just in case anyone needs a clarification, I didn't mention that before. After you ask your question or questions, if you could stay put while answers happen, that way if anyone on the panel needs clarification, you're right there.
Sure, I'll address the initial question regarding design. I would say the design is not finalized in any way, although we do have a program that is relatively finalized. So just in broad scale, we start with program, then go to kind of site assessment and test fits. That's about where we're at now. We then move into design as we get into schematic design, but the phase that we're in now is really to prove the feasibility and then show what options for each site might look like, as opposed to design where we would get into a full design of a building where the thing we showed tonight really starts to look like a building. In terms of cost, escalation I think was covered in the presentation, and there's just no getting out of that, unfortunately. We don't determine construction cost, and that's kind of what it is.
As far as the forward-facing capital plan with multiple buildings, that is something that's very important to the town. It's important to you, and it should be. We are actively working in public meetings with the Long Range Financial Planning Committee, which has representatives from the town, the schools, planning, working with project managers separate from this to build a very future-facing capital plan. We know that FS1 is the first page in that book, and that Thurston will be the second page. Those are imminent, and the short answer to your question of will we have an idea of phasing, we will have forecasts, but some of those decisions are outside of the town's immediate control, particularly for a school building project. You have to apply to the state MSBA to be invited into the grant program. The town, through the select board and school committee, has done that, but we do not know yet if we will be invited in. Once you're invited in, you have to go through a feasibility and schematic design process that can take a year, 2 years, depending. And so we will have a general concept of what the phasing there is, but we won't be able to guarantee when the state would invite the town and Westwood Public Schools in for Thurston. But we are working on that together. We're doing so publicly, and we will be sharing more of that as the summer goes along so that folks hopefully feel like they have a good understanding of things that will be coming next as you consider FS1.
And then I think the last part of the question was about maintenance and operations. And yes, you point out correctly that our expectation of life for a building of this nature is about 50 years. That also depends on good maintenance. So as part of any project, we do include both warranties, training, and then maintenance and operation procedures that go along with the delivery of the actual building. Obviously, it becomes incumbent on the owner of the town to maintain those buildings, but I think you have a robust program here in town that does that, and that would be the expectation. To the point about renovations, a 50-year-old building that gets renovated, you can usually get between another 20 and 30 years out of that building once you reach that 50 years. That doesn't mean you don't do a number of larger capital improvements in that building over the course of that 50 years. Things like window replacements, mechanical systems replacements are in the 20 to 30-year lifespan of that 50-year building. Those become necessary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to this side if you want to start with your name and address. Oh,
Hi, I'm Marie Cairo, 453 High Street. I just want to say initially, I feel duly convinced that we need a new fire station, so my remarks are pretty pointed in regards to the matrix of comparison of sites. My first comment is that you put an abatement and demolition cost only on the existing site, but I don't think it would be realistic to think that nothing would need to be done with that site if the fire station moved to another location. So I don't know if that's an appropriate, where all the costs are assigned to one option and the other two costs, it says, as if the building would magically disappear or that would somehow be resolved without any cost. That seems like something that's going to need to be taken care of regardless. My second question is similar in nature in the sense that the temporary operational costs are only assigned to the first option, which I understand that was certainly the most expensive to relocate operations, but it seems there's going to be some costs regardless. So really in that matrix, it should only be the difference between temporarily operating at another site versus temporarily operating at a fire station 1. The third is that topography is a redundant, that's a redundant criteria since topography affects design and cost. And since you already have design and cost on that matrix, topography becomes redundant unless it somehow affects the project. And then the third is in regards to more of like the town plan, in regards to the opportunity cost of the use of whichever parcel you decide to use and how it affects the land. In 2022, the town purchased 90 Deerfield to create a larger parcel, and that was a strategic choice. And now you're sort of parceling out a little piece of that, which is kind of undoing what was done there. So perhaps one proxy or one way of doing this would be assign a cost value to each piece of land in terms of using it in the town, because you're really sort of taking it from the town and using it. That's one proxy. I'm sure there's better ways to do it. That was the only one I could come up with. But I just want to suggest that we need to consider the opportunity cost of using the different parcels of land in addition to how well it serves the fire station. 10 seconds.
Thank you.
And I know you might not be able to specifically answer each of those tonight, but I do think they need a little bit of follow-up.
Yeah, so I'd say on the temporary facilities cost, the current cost of operating out of Station 1 is borne by the town and wouldn't necessarily be borne by the project just because you've kind of already done it. The only site that requires physically moving the fire department out of and then moving them back into is that existing site. That's why we've carried in that matrix those numbers to make sure that we are transparent with the costs that are not only associated with the actual building, but also the physical moving of that tent structure to another location, and more importantly, renting or buying temporary trailers for things like bunk rooms and decontamination and things like that, where, probably to the, disappointment of the fire department, they can still operate out of Station 1 currently, and so we would expect that, they can operate there until a new building would be built, should it be built on another site. I don't know if I can address the matrix items, that's more of a FS1 item, but Walter?
Happy to speak to, is this working? No. Yes, no?
Yes.
All right. The reason for the demolition and abatement costs being carried at 637 are because those are the only sites, as Greg mentioned, the temporary operations. It's where that demolition and abatement would be required to complete a project. So those differentiators are carried because that is the differentiator between those three sites. Yes, if that building were to be utilized for something else, they would be required, but they are not required as part of a separate project considered at either the lot 14131 or at a Deerfield site.
But can I just put, but when people vote on this, they're voting on a town budget. I understand accounting-wise, you're like assigning it to a specific project. But in terms of like, if you're really looking holistically at the costs, and when we vote on spending money as a town, either way, we're gonna be spending the money. Something needs to be done with that site. So I just think there needs to be a little more discipline and differentiation in that process. So we're not just voting on one item.
I appreciate the feedback as far as getting down to a better level of detail on that. The kind of exercise that we're at now with a rough order of magnitude is trying to just give responsibly enough information to try to differentiate them without overpromising that we know exactly what each of those sites would cost. That's kind of intentionally why tonight when we are presenting the range of cost. We're not necessarily, it's there, you all have it, we're not hiding the ball, but in the presentation showed the range of all three options because we don't want you as residents to feel like we're kind of putting our thumb on the scale for any one site. We're trying to hear from you what site you think makes the most sense. But as let's assume if the existing site is recommended at the end of next week, those kind of considerations you're bringing up are certainly things that we could incorporate into the schematic design phase before it gets to a vote.
Okay, I guess my overriding summary comment would be that I think that some of the costs are sort of putting their thumb on the scale a little bit if they're sort of big costs that aren't 100% accurate in terms of the whole scope of the project. That's all. And I appreciate also the trying to be transparent and trying to educate us. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move over here. We have the mic working, so the next person
Is
would
this
like to go.
working? Can you guys hear me? Okay,
We can
cool.
hear you. Name and address.
My name is Chad Brodsky. I am at 77 Deerfield Ave, which is directly across from the elementary school. So this is very important. So first of all, on fire station operations and neighborhood impact, what hazardous materials or chemicals will be stored on site? What safeguards are in place to protect nearby residents, and what measures will be taken to minimize impacts from emergency operations, including sirens, apparatus noise, other activity? Will there be policies that are governing siren use or Deerfield? And then are the trucks being able to leave out of Gay Street, or they're just going directly out of the proposed dead end area? And then how does this project fit into a potential town's broader city center or village center that's been discussed in planning of this area in the Deerfield? And then how also will the Deerfield Elementary School be impacted specifically with this project? Because it doesn't look like from the visualization of these designs that any impact is going to be there except on the fields. So I would like some further clarification on how is that site that's existing there with specifically the structures, and then also from a visibility perspective on Deerfield, how will that be affected? Will I be able to see this big new back of the building, or what's it facing, things like that? Thank you.
So I'll start with the overall siting questions. So as you saw on the proposed layout, and you can see further in the lobby at the end of the meeting, the proposal is to locate the building on kind of the northwest corner of the site, kind of adjacent to the wetlands. That is toward like the American Legion building. The intent is so that the building is, further away from both the abutters on High Street and the abutters on Deerfield Ave, potentially contemplating, which is a bigger conversation, dead-ending Deerfield Ave with some form of controlled access there. So should, the fire department have to get to Deerfield Ave to respond to an incident on Deerfield Ave, they didn't have to go all the way around, out Westwood Glen. But we've looked at two potential exits from that site. One, which is part of that parcel, which is about a 20-foot portion that goes directly to High Street. There's a second means that we think is a very viable and kind of attractive route, which would be going out of the site, going to the back of the police department and coming through a lane that is already built in the back of the police department with a little bit of an expansion at as it gets to High Street to make that emergency response kind of clean. With these buildings, we always like to have multiple ways to exit these buildings. Should one become blocked, we don't want to impede the fire department's ability to respond out to town or to that incident. I think that's, yeah, in terms of hazardous materials, I'll allow the chief to speak to what they are, but within a new modern fire department, everything within an apparatus bay or the related rooms that control hazardous materials is built for both firefighter safety and really just broader environmental safety. So making sure that any water or chemicals that are in the apparatus bay get captured into stormwater drains or drains within the building, get properly sent to sewer is really important. The department has a number of policies and procedures in place to make sure things that come back with them from a fire are properly treated, stored or contained, and then, properly disposed of. So in terms of larger portions of hazardous waste or things like that, I don't think you deal with much of that on an actual site. But I think the town has experienced PFAS, contamination. Firefighting foams have eliminated to the furthest extent possible the use of PFAS in those foams. Foams are no longer used in training. So those kind of risks that were unknown before that are affecting you currently on the current Fire Station 1 site are really no longer, kind of a challenge that you would have to face in the future. In terms of the visibility from Deer Street, this is proposed on this site to be 2-story, so as opposed to the existing site where we would need to go 3-story, it would only be 2-story. A 2-story building with a pitched roof would be 45 to 50 feet, something like that, maybe a little bit taller depending on how wide things are in the final design. But from the houses on Deerfield Ave, I don't expect you would see much of that building, if any.
So for the hazardous materials, it's pretty much what you have in your garage. We have motor oil, gasoline for our tools and everything. The only thing different would be biohazard stuff that we put in a locked box, and it gets picked up every week by an approved vendor. As far as the sirens and everything, we would need to use them when we were approaching getting onto 109. I'll say there wouldn't be any increase for you because we're doing that now as it is. It's just 100 feet down the road.
Just to confirm, would you be leaving and going out towards Gay Street, or just exclusively out to High Street?
The only reason that we would go down Deerfield Ave is if there was an emergency on Deerfield Ave. I assume that if you were having a heart attack, you wouldn't want us to go all the way around.
Yeah.
So it would be a gate with like a fob that we could use to get to you. When we had proposed the old station and we were going to put temp ops there, I already had a policy written up that said, we will not be using Deerfield Ave. We don't want to go down there. It's too tight. It's just a recipe for disaster. So that would be our policy, that we would not use that unless we were going to service one of you on the street.
Is this on? I'd just like to add that from a committee perspective, the question that you asked is something that we've asked, that we've looked at. There's a lot of land that the town owns in and around Deerfield, and we're conscious of the fact that there are many other potential uses for that land and for the community. One of the things that we really appreciate about the design that has been proposed is that the fire station is in what I'm going to call the back left corner because I'm directionally challenged. So essentially it would be a fire station that is right behind the existing police station, right behind the existing town hall, and leaves a good amount of that parcel that the town owns available for whatever the town decides to do with it in the future.
Yeah, and just to put a kind of point on the future use, when we were in both pre-feasibility leading up to town meeting and in this phase, the layout of the site that you see, concept level as it is reflective of a lot of feedback we've gotten directly from the community, from neighbors, of trying to minimize that impact, but also to do things like preserve field space for recreation and have as minimal impact on the existing structure as possible, because that building does get used. Obviously, there's recreation programming in there. Town IT staff works out of a former nurse's office. We have a lot of space needs across the town and schools. And so that was something that was important to the committee. It's important to the town and the select board that if that is the direction that it goes, to try to leave, to preserve the recreational opportunities that are there and to leave future opportunities, whether that's through a renovation or a new build of a community center where the existing building is.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move over here. Thank you. Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi, Hi, Claire Galkowski, 328 Dover Road. Thank you for holding all of these meetings. I have to confess, this is my first one. I've been trusting our beautiful committee here to help be doing all their homework, but I just wanted to raise a question and a concern about the site behind Starbucks. I walked that beautiful site today. It's a heavily wooded area, and I'm just trying to envision what it would look like to clear cut those trees and develop that area that is currently providing environmental services like flood mitigation and, shade and habitat. I understand it's town-owned land and it's probably not under conservation restriction, but I just wonder what would be involved in developing that parcel to provide this service, and is the environmental impact being considered as a cost?
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The access would require clearing for a road way up and some grading for that roadway. The proposed location on that site is sort of at the crest of the hill, so at the highest most point in that site. That is both for proximity to High Street, but also trying to get it in a relatively flat portion of the site and make sure that we are being responsible with the amount of time it takes to get back to High Street. That would involve clearing, obviously, for about 1.5 acres or so of the land around the building, plus the extension out to High Street. That said, that does leave a fair portion of that site undeveloped toward the back, which are, though not protected by conservation restrictions, are wetlands and therefore kind of undevelopable in and of themselves. So hopefully that helps. And
Okay, well, I'm voting against that site. Thank you very much.
Ada John 73, Patrick Drive. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I support building a new fire station. As of today, I personally prefer the Deerfield site. However, I'm shocked to learn that the Select Board is scheduled to vote on the DAB exclusion public language next Monday, August 3rd. Several key decisions have not been made. The FS1 committee will not make its final site recommendation until August 7th. Construction bids are not expected until late 2027, so we won't know the actual project cost until then. Given these uncertainties, I have several questions. First, how can the Select Board determine how much we need to borrow before the site is selected and before the final project is known? Second, how much certified free cash does the town currently have? Can we dedicate a portion of that free cash to the FS1 project and reduce the amount we need to borrow? Last budget cycle, the town had around 15 million in free cash, with about 10 million allocated to capital projects. For this budget cycle and next, could we dedicate 5 to 10 million or more of free cash to the FS1 and reduce the amount we need to borrow through the DAB exclusion? Third, how much could the town borrow with its existing tax levy capacity, including annual levy growth and new growth, before asking voters to approve a larger DAB exclusion? We don't need to borrow the entire project cost through a DAB exclusion. Under Massachusetts law, a DAB exclusion covers the amount of borrowing authorized for the project, but that does not necessarily mean every project expense has to be financed through the borrowing. One more sentence?
Yeah.
I believe residents deserve clear answer to this question before being asked to vote on the DAB exclusion. Thank you.
No. Thank you. I agree with you. So there's a lot of really good and really important questions in there, and I'll try to get through them, and I may need to ask for clarification on some of the detail. But as far as to the board voting the debt exclusion ballot before a site is picked, not my favorite timeline either, but under state law, if it's going to be on the midterm election ballot, it has to be with the state by either the Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. It doesn't lock in a dollar amount, because under a debt exclusion project, the dollar amount, the budget that is set for the project, is not on the ballot. That's a Prop 2.5 requirement. The ballot simply asks a yes or no question to the voters of whether or not we shall be allowed to exempt from the limit of Prop 2.5 the costs of bonds associated with the project. So the language the board will be considering on Monday does not say list a site, and it does not need to, just as it did not last time, and it doesn't say how much the borrowing would be, because we wouldn't have an appropriate number at this point. So that language will be the same whether they vote the ballot before a site is picked, after a site is picked, fully designed at schematic design. So it's really more to preserve the ability to be on that ballot. And the board's been discussing that at their meetings publicly since, I believe, May, really focusing on where we are with the project, that the midterm election is much more likely to have a much more representative turnout of voters in Westwood than any local election. Even a very high turnout municipal election usually doesn't come anywhere close to a midterm. And so I believe, ultimately the board will debate it and make their decision Monday, but the discussions they have had publicly have been leaning towards putting more priority on that increased voter participation on this question than on the kind of awkwardness of a process where they have to vote a ballot the week that the site's being picked. So again, the language on the ballot doesn't say they're going to borrow 30 million, 40 million, and it typically wouldn't. That's governed by the article that's going to go to town meeting that all of you will have a say on and will have to vote on. And you will have that before, it'll be like any other town meeting where we would have to itemize out, shall the town be authorized to borrow X amount of dollars for a project? As far as the question of can free cash be utilized, yes. And that's something we're looking at. We're going to start that conversation on Monday night. The free cash is certified in the fall, so we do not yet have the certified free cash after annual town meeting. But you were correct that the free cash was about 15 million. 9.7-ish was spent in May. So we're carrying nearly six into the new year. The fiscal year just closed on June 30th, and by the fall, before the special town meeting where you would be considering this project, we will know what that certified free cash balance is and be able to make informed decisions about how much of that balance do we think is appropriate to apply towards this project and reduce the exempt bond that you're referencing, and therefore reduce the tax impact. So those are great questions. I largely agree. The last bit, I think, was a question about can you plan to draw down a bit of free cash each year? Under state law, you need to have full authorization from your legislative body, in our case, town meeting, for the total project cost before you could sign a contract. So it's not necessarily doable to, let's say the project is 35 million, and you want to bond 30, and you put 2 million of free cash in that appropriation, you're at 32. We can't sign a contract with a construction company saying that we intend to seek 3 million more next year, because until it's actually authorized by the legislative body, we can't sign on it. So good questions. We are thinking along those same lines, and again, the language being voted Monday is really reserving a spot on the ballot that's going to have the highest turnout and the most participation from the residents of Westwood for any ballot between now and the 2028 presidential election. The dollars and cents, the finance plan for the project are all things that will be built in the coming months and will be built publicly. They will be subject to hearings with the finance committee, mailers to every house in Westwood, as any other capital project would. Sure. This is a similar cadence of project planning with MSBA projects, where you're at the schematic design phase. One of the key deliverables and key milestones of a schematic design phase is what you have a project scope and budget, so that elected policymakers and residents have enough information to decide, do we think this is the right fix this time? And you will have that before you vote.
Hi, does it work? Hello? Yeah. My name is Maria Costantini, 15 Spelman Road. This is a tangential question to the discussion in a way, but I'm curious about the current state of this station, because you mentioned something about the soil or the terrain that is unstable, and you have to have the trucks close to the main road. If this is a serious problem, how is it going to be addressed in the new design?
So the current issue at Fire Station 1 is in the slab of the apparatus bay, so the floor of the apparatus bay. The floor of the apparatus bay, because the site is sloping, is actually above another space. So it is a suspended slab that is cast in place back in the year 1975 when the building was built. Because of the construction process at that time, it is a single monolithic slab. Over the 50 and more years that the building has been in operation, fire trucks come back, they have salt on them from the roadway, they have ice and snow on them, they melt, that ice and snow carries the salt down into the slab and eventually rusts the rebar that is what really keeps that in place. You know, as to how we prevent those problems from happening in the future, new buildings are constructed a bit differently, where they have a structural slab, if that was the design, and then they have a kind of a layer between that and a topping slab that protects that structural slab so that these don't become issues anymore. Preferably, we would build not as a suspended slab or slab above. We would like the apparatus to be slab on grade, so built on ground, and that is a typical process there. We design buildings in both ways because as that site might dictate, you just need to build buildings in that way, but it is a little bit more robust in terms of the modern construction, comparatively speaking, to the building you have now. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. I think here some of the very important themes here are critical thinking and not leaving money on the table.
Excuse me? Name and address,
David
please.
Warshay, 18 Colby Way. I was saying critical thinking and not leaving money on the table here. I think the cleanest option, in my opinion, is to put the fire station right behind the police station, and then the current land on the fire station right now, look at it, what's it worth to a developer, just say like a Petroziello for like a 3-story apartment building. It's obviously worth a few $1 million. That would help offset the fire station cost. And the same with if Deerfield, part of it is sold off, just say for townhouses, and the other land that's talking about behind the Starbucks is also sold. That could really maybe raise $7-8 million somewhere in that vicinity to help offset the total cost of the station here. Try to keep it as clean and simple as possible. Any thoughts on the offset costs? Anything to help reduce the cost? Because obviously the 2 votes have shown there's a lot of price sensitivity in Westwood on this fire station.
Sure, thank you. So it's a good question, and it's a good thought that often cities and towns have to think about if they're doing a new project and it's going to vacate an old building. I am not an appraiser, so I'm just being open with you. We're having a discussion. The reality is that the existing fire station site, while would certainly have attractive features to a private sector buyer, the soil has PFAS contamination, the building has hazardous materials in it, and so as a resident correctly pointed out earlier, talking about how we're assessing costs for a project, those are costs that you would need to be dealt with during a transaction, right? It's sort of like if you're selling your home and you have a failed septic, you as the seller are not going to you're gonna eat that cost, right? And so in my prior experience in another community, we did a building consolidation project. It did create a variety of vacant buildings, and the volume of funding that we were able to generate from those was not enough to necessarily materially offset the project if the building was something that had hazardous materials or there was some soil considerations. So that is certainly an option if a different site, whether it's behind Starbucks or Deerfield, is chosen. And it is, I would assume, thankfully from all of your perspective, not something that I get to just decide from Town Hall. Authorizing the sale of a former fire station would have to go through town meeting. We would have it appraised. We would have to do that publicly with you. So that is an option, but just from a pure sequencing standpoint, we wouldn't be able to kind of write a check we couldn't cash to you as taxpayers and say we think we're going to get X million after it's vacated and sold, so we're not going to borrow. But it could potentially offset a portion of that borrowing authorization if that is the route you went and you were able to find a buyer that felt it was worth it.
Thank you. Okay, right here. You can go ahead with your name and address.
Okay. Hi, my name is Alice Smith, 78 Gay Street. First, I want to start off by saying that I've been to a gazillion of these meetings and think that you guys are doing a fabulous job. So, and everyone, I think, is in agreement that a new fire station is warranted. And I don't think that's an issue. But I wanted to list a couple of the issues that I have with locating. I was looking through the information on the website, and one of the things I noticed, there was a site 1, 2, and 3, and some $ cost estimates. And one of the things I noticed was that the cost of demolishing the building on the current station site and mitigating the environmental impacts of the PFAS and other contamination that potentially exist on that site are a cost that should be reflected in every single one of the project estimates. And I understand that the town bears the cost of that, but that cost is taken on by the town regardless of where the project gets located. And I think that cost should be reflected in the pricing for every single one of the sites. And I know you must be sick of hearing me on this topic, but flooding is an issue around the Deerfield. For a long time, we have been experiencing, and particularly since the police station was built, an increase in the amount of water in our backyards. People are all running their sump pumps, and my yard floods. We're not just having wetlands near the police station, but we have wetlands on the other side of a lot of buildings, and it's having an impact regardless of stormwater. And the last thing I wanted to point out was that or a question that I would like to ask is, will the property owners be reimbursed for the loss of property value resulting from its proximate location to a fire station at the Deerfield? And one other issue was, if you're taking part of the Deerfield building, what happens to the rest of the building? Are you leaving a half building unconstructed? You know, perhaps you could address some of that for me.
So let me try to address at least a couple of these and make sure I don't miss any, please. The cost associated with soil contamination on the existing site is kind of a two-part question. The first is the work that the town is already doing through a separate LSP to remediate the PFAS contamination on that site is an issue that the town is dealing with outside of the project. The cost carried in our rough order of magnitude costing is the cost that would be borne by the project on that site specifically to deal with soil management of soil that is then contaminated by that PFAS that does not get resolved by the ongoing work that the town is doing. So that cost is not the remediation cost that the town is taking elsewhere and is only really relevant to that one site. Though there are other differences on different sites. This is simply if we take dirt from that site and move it around, we have to deal with that cost, and that cost is very specific to that one site. In terms of the stormwater, the Deerfield School is not a modern facility and has very little stormwater management. The area that you're in, rightly point out, has a lot of wetlands in it, and most of that developed area was likely at one time wetlands, hence the water issues. Any new development is required to go through site plan review, as it goes through on any site, and required to meet a much higher standard than those buildings that were developed in the 70s and 80s were under. And as part of the design process, we would mitigate any additional stormwater caused by the added impervious area of the project. In terms of the demolition at Deerfield School, the current layout only proposes removing some existing modular trailers that are associated with the building from, I don't know, maybe the 90s or so, that are pretty much under useful life, and it does not touch the permanent building at all, other than, you know, removing that connection to there and you know, closing that off. So in terms of the values, I would have to defer.
Yeah, I mean, the question about real estate values, I have not, in my experience, doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I've never heard of a public building project paying folks for, I guess, future marginal value differences. In a hypothetical where your property values were going down under any circumstance, whether it's a project or market conditions, if you felt your assessed value was, that you're taxed on was inappropriate, you would be free to avail yourself of the abatement process that anyone else could.
Thank you. Connor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry. That's all right.
Came out of the ceiling.
Yeah. Because part of your question, I think, is a question that we as a committee asked at our last meeting, and I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying, because we asked the same question about the cost of remediation. Wouldn't the town have to do this anyway, regardless of if you were building a fire station there or not? Why is this only a cost? Why is this cost being added to the cost of building a new fire station at High Street? Shouldn't the town have to do that anyway? And as I understand it, the way it was explained to us is that cost that's reflected on the cost sheet that you saw for the, what I'm going to call remediation, if you rebuild the fire station where it is on High Street, is only the cost of what you would have to do over and above what the town has to do in general to get rid of the PFAS if you built a new fire station there. If you weren't building a new fire station there, you'd still have to do the remediation that the town is doing. That number is not included in the cost of fire station, new fire station at High Street. It's just the add-on to that if you were to build a new fire station at that location.
That is correct, Jody. It is really the management of soil in that case, and in most cases, that would be likely off-site disposal of soil. When you're remediating it currently in your current position, you don't have to dispose of the soil. You can remediate that soil in situ, in place, and come to a final resolution with DEP over the course of time. Because we are contemplating building a building there, we don't have the benefit of that time necessarily in order to remediate that soil prior to the building project. And that's why it is only a cost associated with that one option and not with the other options, as the town has committed to, dealing with that, larger remediation process separate from the project.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Nancy Hyde, 15 Martingale Lane. First, I want to thank the chief and the entire fire department for making lemonade out of lemons and making that station work for the short term. I know it's really difficult. And also for assembling whatever level of patience you've all been able to pull together while we come up with a solution for this dire situation now. And I want to thank everybody for your work on this. It's, you're picking us all up and helping us go forward, and that's no small task, and you're doing an excellent job. 2 points. First, on Deerfield as an option, The way the departure is being designed, leading to a potential dead ending of Deerfield Avenue with the cul-de-sac, I just want to make two observations. One is people at Westwood Glen, at least historically, really enjoyed the ability to access Gay Street through Deerfield Avenue and avoid going out on High Street. It was in part behind the town's design of the road behind the police station when the town acquired the former Scout House and built a real road when it was just parking lots and made it safe. So, and the other side of that equation is the people that live on Deerfield Avenue no longer have their ease of access onto 109 from Westwood Glen Road adjacent to Town Hall. So that, while small numbers, still impactful. To the site behind Starbucks, my question for you is, in acquiring the portion or all of the Gulf Station site through a taking, how are we reflecting the cost to clean up the site? Is that borne by the current owner, or because it's a taking, does that become the town's responsibility, and is it built into the cost as a result? And in general, I'd like to say, and it hasn't been discussed, I believe traffic impacts, if it was behind Starbucks, would be horrific on 109. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm going to look to Nora, who will signal to me if I'm butchering permit answers here. The existing easement on the Gulf that in these diagrams is shown as being expanded involves a property that currently has permits from the planning board. Okay, I'm getting nods so far. That if the owner of the property executed on the permits that they have permission to do to expand all town, yes, doing good, 2 out of probably 3 or 4, they would need to remediate if there were contaminated soils. The question as to who bears the liability if, I suppose the town goes first in your question is hard to answer at this point, which I think is why, although I'm getting a nod here, why there's a kind of conservative estimate there. As we have with abutters to all 3 sites throughout, we are engaged in conversations, and we will be meeting further with property owners to try to understand that better. But it is carried as a kind of risk in the order of magnitude cost for that reason.
Right here.
Colin Cassidy, 628 High Street. I just wanted a little clarification on the Deerfield site. You've only mentioned the exit at the police station. However, when I looked on the schematic, it had a proposal for an additional exit running between my property and my neighbor's property. I had a little path that runs there from High Street to the Deerfield fields. So is that off the table now, or is that still under consideration? And I would just want to say that as property owners next to that path, we do see a lot of residents who do use that path, and they're using the fields. And so I really would like it not to be turned into an exit for the fire station if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we showed on the slide, both potential exit routes are still under consideration. That portion of the site is part of the overall Deerfield's parcel, and that would only be a single exit way, roadway. It would not be a two-way, drive. It would really be only a drive out from the fire station with return back through Westwood Glen, around the backside of the police station, should that be utilized. Knowing that there might need to be multiple ways to get out of that site, we've looked at both that access and potentially expanding the exit out on the side of the police station for options for the board.
So you're saying you still want to take that path?
That portion that is part of that site is still part of considerations in the design process, and until the design process goes all the way through, it's hard to say it will or won't be fully developed, but that is, a route out of that site that is feasible for the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
All right, right over here on this side, we're ready for you.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Clark, live at 90 Country Lane. I'm looking at this document that came out, I think today, where it has this cost comparatives, and it talks about at the end a total project cost of $43.7 million for High Street, $40.3 million for Deerfield Ave, and $43.3 million for the other lot. One of the big costs for the High Street location is the temporary operations. And I guess one of my feelings is listening to the fire chief tonight and how difficult it is with the temporary operations that are there today. Aren't we being kind of short-sighted to think that we might not have to have temporary operations anyway, regardless of any site we select?
The only site that would need further temporary operations really is the Fire Station 1. You will have to, continue to operate that temporary tent structure, and sure, there may be some ancillary costs associated with that, getting some heat in there in the winter, other things like that, but they're not really at the order of magnitude level that moving full operations out of that building and onto another site, so that site becomes vacant for the purpose of the construction. So they're just kind of not in the same order of magnitude, so we don't necessarily consider maintenance on that tent structure or things like that as part of the other projects. But to just clarify, the temporary facilities that are at the current site really only manage a fairly small portion of the apparatus bay. When we move that building, or really not the building, but the firefighters, their equipment, and their full operations, that is moving the administrative staff, the maintenance staff, and all of the firefighting staff, office space, living space, mechanic space, storage space, decontamination space. And that's why you see such a drastic difference, because the existing Station 1, though portions of the building are frankly failing, there are other portions that they can continue to use, at least in the short term, should there be another site picked. That doesn't mean that those are better options necessarily. It just means that assigning that cost to that option is necessary to make sure that the town can understand those financial impacts and how they apply to different sites.
Right. Thank you. I guess what I'm throwing out here is that based on what I heard from the chief may, in a couple of months with bad weather, come back to the town and say, this isn't viable here, these tents or whatever they're called, and we need to move to another temporary location. It seems to me that in that example, if that were to happen, what you're speaking of, sir, he would have to have his administrative, he would have to have everybody go with him. So I'm just hoping we're not going to be short-sighted about this, that we may end up spending that $2.5 million anyway, regardless of the site.
No, I appreciate that. Yes, what I'm pointing out is that we make things work. That's what we do. We figure things out. And if that's what we have to do to get to a station, that's what we'll do. That's just how we operate in the fire department. Is it a great long-term, no. But could it get us to 2029? Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your service in this difficult situation, and thank you to the committee for all the good work you've done.
Sorry, could I just note quick, because I see a couple folks peeling off as the night gets on. There's 3 blown-up renderings of these options out in the lobby, or you could actually just click. Can you click next? Only one. And we have red, yellow, and green stickers for you to rank, if you would like, on the boards. Also, there is a survey where you could do the same thing. So just wanted to remind people of that.
Thank you. All right, we're ready.
Brittany Fish, 55 Mayfair Drive. I went into Monday's committee meeting very open to both the current site and the Deerfield site, and based on the information presented there, I selected Deerfield as my top choice on the survey for two reasons. First, Deerfield is not only estimated to have the lowest total cost, but it also appears to have the least risk of unexpected additional costs, looking at the 4% versus 14.5% potential variable number. And the fact that Deerfield does not require the zoning variances needed at the current site adds to that confidence. My second major factor was flexibility. Its size provides more options as the design is refined, including the possibility of removing one bay. It also better positions the town for the next 20, 40, 60 plus years if changes or expansions are ever needed. The current site is much more constrained by its size and slope. The only benefit to the current site that I initially saw was its visibility on High Street, which my children certainly appreciate. But after asking the firefighters, I didn't hear significant concerns about visibility or response times that couldn't be addressed through signage and thoughtful planning. So for my questions, Connor answered most of them related to the current site, but I have heard concerns from neighbors about the town ensuring that any future development on the current site fits the surrounding neighborhood. So are there zoning or design requirements that would help accomplish that? Additionally, with the Deerfield site, do you have any anticipated impacts on rec activities and parking long-term? Same question for St. John's and the preschool at the end of the street. And then do you have a predicted useful life of the Deerfield building as it stands now? Thank you.
Sorry, that was a lot, and it was very quick, so I'm going to do my best.
I can repeat the question.
In terms of the projected life of the existing building, we have not studied that existing building. However, it's toward the, sorry.
We're not using royal we here. KBA has not studied it, right? But the schools obviously went through a process that determined that it's, by virtue of building new, it was determined that it was not really a useful facility. So I don't have that in front of me. We can find if there was an estimate on its exact life. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I haven't been inside, so just looking at it as someone who has, I imagine, like, do you see that children could be in there for club activities in 5 years, or?
I guess I'd look to the building commissioner. It is. Mike is excited.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm Mike Perkins, Building Commissioner. So to the usefulness of the Deerfield School, it is what it is today. It hasn't been really touched. I don't want to say touched, but it hasn't been updated, renovated since it was a school. Basically, the rec and the town staff that are in there right now are able to use the building as it is right now. It's not necessarily failing structurally. There are some things that need to be addressed. Obviously, the HVAC systems, things like that. You know, it's got single pane windows in it, those kind of things. So if it was going to be a long-term community center or town offices or things like that, you would definitely have to throw some money into it. It would be inappropriate right now to guesstimate what that's going to be. Just depends on how much of the building is going to be utilized and what it's going to be utilized for. There are a lot of good opportunities in that building just for rec purposes. There's, some open space. There's a cafeteria area, those kind of things in there. And then just to go to the zoning question, it's difficult to answer that right now as far as the variances are concerned because, as everybody has said, these are very high-level preliminary designs. We know that the existing site will more than likely, obviously there were 8 last time that were granted. There will be likely at least 6 that would be required for that site, no matter what type of building or size of building is there. That's just based on the size of the structure, the size of the parking area, where the parking areas are located, the size of the site itself. The advantages of the other 2 sites is that they are large enough that you can locate a building and all the other accessories, appurtenances, things like that, out of the required setback distances. It's likely that there will be some sort of variance needed at some point, either for parking within the buffer zones, not necessarily the building setbacks, or building coverage, things like that, and impervious coverage, depending on which site is selected and how it's developed. So right now, the only site that we know of that would require some sort of zoning relief in the form of variances would be the current station, 637 High Street. As everybody has said a couple of times tonight, I think the existing station couldn't be built there without those approvals today. No matter what goes there, if it's FS1, there's likely going to be at least, I would say, half a dozen variances required for that. The other ones are up in the air, but they are large enough that they would be able to accommodate a more spread out building so as to not require necessarily the height variances, things that are, getting too close to the property lines, the parking spaces being too close to the property lines in a residential district, things like that. But at this point, until we get a site selected and even further on into the design process, can't really tell you exactly what, if anything, would be required on those other sites.
Thank you.
And I think perhaps one of the questions was also, would a future non-municipal reuse of the existing station be subject to zoning? Was that the question?
It wasn't, but it
Oh, so, well, the way it is zoned right now, so our zoning regulations basically say that a municipal facility can go anywhere. Doesn't have to be zoned commercial. It can be in a residential area or whatever. 637 High Street is currently zoned residential. In the future, if something, let's just say it was built, FS1 was built at one of the other sites and that site was sold either to, somebody wanting to build a single family house, they could do that by right. No special permits needed, no, variances, zoning, things like that. If there was an opportunity to change the zoning of that parcel to accommodate either a mixed-use building, a commercial structure, something along those lines. Somebody earlier today talked about a town village type development on this side of town, something a la Islington Center. That's a bigger question. That's talking about expanding zoning districts, the local business areas that are on High Street, expanding that to encompass that 637 High Street. It's a possibility. Would it be worth more money if that was the case? Maybe, yes, don't know. Obviously we're talking years down the line, so that's a little bit getting ahead of ourselves there, but the way it is right now, if that's not a fire station today, the only thing that could go there by right would be a single family house.
Thank you. Yeah, that covers it. And then the other question was just about the impacts on the church. It would seem to me that a cul-de-sac would be only beneficial, but I might not be thinking of, drawbacks to changing that road for the church and preschool and residents.
Yeah, in terms of access, that's a complicated question. You've heard folks here tonight that, were in favor of maybe dead-ending that or potentially didn't favor that because of, the access through to 109. Any of that work would be part of the overall design process and would be subject to all of the normal, processes that go into making roadways work and changing traffic patterns as part of a development.
Can I just add, with regard to the part of your question about ease of construction, we did have a bit of discussion about that at our last committee meeting. If you look at the proposed order of magnitude cost, there's a potential high cost, a potential low cost, and it's a pretty big delta. I mean, my memory is it was over $6 million between the high and low. And as a committee, when we met, we asked the question, of the three sites, based on what you know now, do you have an opinion as to which site is most likely to come in low as opposed to high on your spread? And we were told Deerfield.
Thank you. We're going to move over here. I just want to see, have you already had a turn?
I did, yes, but he said I could.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Chad Brodsky again, 77 Deerfield, as this really impacts if Deerfield is. So question is, topography, what would the cost to grade and level the current High Street site, and how does that, to reduce if instead of a 2-story versus a 3-story? And then also a request, if the entrance and exit and Deerfield was chosen, is the town able to make the entrance and exit as far close to the police station? Because right now it's showing as directly as part of that cul-de-sac. So when you guys are doing that design, if that is right next to the dead end, that would be quite, that would cause more traffic. And then when it comes to like the field and tracks, would the track be recreated as well? Because that's something that my family use all the time, in addition to the fields. And then lastly, would you guys be willing to put in writing regarding what streets would be used for the Deerfield if you guys were going to use the Deerfield Ave as an exit to, let's say there was a fire on Deerfield Ave or whatever specific areas. Otherwise, later on, you could decide 3 years from now, hey, we're just going to start going out Deerfield Ave into Gay Street, and then those are my questions. Thank you.
In terms of regulating the ability for fire apparatus to utilize streets, that is really a question of policy for the department. I think the chief is already committed to having that policy in place. And to your point, policies can change. In theory, through the permitting process, there could be conditions put on that parcel, though that's a hard thing to do for emergency response. It's a tricky condition, and I understand the point, but it is a difficult thing to ask a fire department not to use a street. Look, I think the chief's commitment to putting that policy in place is pretty clear, for what it's worth. Second, the proposed drawing shows the walking, I won't call it a track because people think it's a running track, but a walking loop around the fields to be recreated as part of those reestablished fields. As to the exit from the Deerfield site shifting to the west, that portion there toward the west, and why we show the exit where it is toward Westwood Glen, is because that portion, that like kind of triangular shaped piece between the proposed site and the police department is wetlands. So we would love to come out that way, though we would be kind of blowing right through the middle of wetlands. So that is why that drive lane is shifted a bit to the east. It's because that existing wetland there exists and would have to be dealt with. Sorry, in terms of regrading the existing Fire Station 1 site, that's really just not something that's feasible. The grade drop from High Street down to the back side of the site is, I think, 12 feet or so, maybe 13 feet. So to bring that up to be level at High Street just kind of isn't, feasible typically, particularly given the tight constraints of the site. We just, you'd have a 14-foot, 18-foot high wall against abutting properties that probably just isn't feasible, and the cost would be pretty exorbitant.
Thank you.
Okay, right here. You can go ahead. Yes.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi.
Julianne Bride, 20 Whitney Ave. First, want to say thank you to all for the time and work you've put in addressing really voters' concerns last year around cost of the project and scope. I think we have 3 good, very equitable options here. I am in favor of keeping the fire station at the existing site. I am concerned about using green space that we have very limited left in this town, especially as we're about to build a new middle school and likely to eat up some of the fields, et cetera, in that area of town. So my questions, or first a comment, I think we have to be careful in your pros and cons of describing the Deerfield lot as favorable about getting a new softball field. I mean, the reality is you're taking a significant portion of green space there and then trying to tell us, oh, but you'll get a new softball field, which would be great, but the reality is we could pay for a new softball field with free cash. So just be careful with some of those analysis points that may be more opinion than fact. And then the question really on the other sites, we talk easements, we have variances, we have takings. The town was sued over variances on the last project on the existing site. The town did settle. Are we at risk for this happening on any of these sites, giving takings, easements, or variances? Can you address that, and is it built into your variable cost? And then I'll make one quick comment because I have time. As far as commercial, expanding the commercial tax base, I think that's a great idea. I would like to see the town, and I think the Long Range Committee is looking at maximizing the commercial space we have, beautifying the center of 109 to look like the Islington side, and I think we really need to focus on that and not try to saddle the fire station project with commercial development. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's going to be irritating that I'm hedging right out of the gate, but I have to hedge that we're talking about could we potentially be sued? Towns get sued a lot. Not making light of it, but that was why when we were doing pre-feasibility, we asked Weston and Sampson to do a zoning and setback analysis to see which of the 3 sites is it most likely we could situate a building on that was kind of outside of those setbacks and those areas of larger risk for creating standing for someone. Can we guarantee that there wouldn't be some appeal on some part of permitting, whether through Concom or planning or ZBA? No. But what we know for certain at the existing site is, given how constrained it is, given that you couldn't build what's there now without variances, that I think has and I'll look to the whole team, but has a materially higher risk of those types of appeals. Is that fair, Nora? Okay. So, but whether someone could file an appeal of a permit or a lawsuit is hard to guarantee, but the existing site has some really significant challenges in that area, uniquely poor compared to the other 2, just due to the size difference.
Right here, sir.
Hi, I'm David Berliner, 34 Glen Road. First of all, like many, I want to thank all of you who've been so involved in this for the hard work and creativity to address the community's challenges and find us a good site. I'm very supportive of us getting a new fire station in particular, and supportive especially of both the current site and Deerfield site. While we have, I think, a good number of people here, I applaud the intention of using the election this fall to get more participation. That said, while clearly a lot of people are participating and going to the many sessions that you've done, and I applaud you for really taking the feedback to get the community more involved, I'd be curious to know how you plan to get more word out to those who are not as closely paying attention, particularly given the general election vote. And within that, I really appreciated on tonight's slides the projection of what last year's project would have cost if we did it now to help level set expectations. Figuring out a way to convey, particularly for those who are not as present here today, the cost of inaction. Obviously, it's unacceptable to not have a fire station, but making that eminently clear what a no vote would mean to the town. Do you have any plans of how to convey that message?
I'm going to first hand it to Ford and Jody as far as some of the, I guess, less formal ways the committee is getting word out, and then we could come back to cost of inaction.
Thank you, and I really want to thank all of you that are here. Just briefly, and you saw the list of meetings, you know, this committee started in December 1, and we've had 18 meetings, just committee meetings since then, let alone numerous community meetings that you have. Those community meetings will continue on through the 7th. We have 3 more planned, and I hope you all watch that meeting on the 7th. I think it's going to be key because we're going to finish that matrix that we were charged with by the Board of Selectmen back in November. So we're going to be doing that, and I think it's important. All these meetings are recorded, so we know that we had, I'm guessing, 70 or so people here out of 16,000. We haven't touched everybody, and it is summer when everybody goes away. Not quite true, but everything is recorded for people to see. Now, they have to take it on themselves to go do that. Our work is not going to stop on the 7th while they go do their design. We are going to continue the process that we've had since December 1, holding meetings, going out to see people, going to people's homes, doing whatever we need to do to communicate and listen to what you all have had to say. This has been very valuable for that. I do want to mention, just for a minute, this committee, Jody Petroselli is the vice chair, Ken Ayers is here, Peter Bean was here, Harry Davis and John Cummings and Sarah were not here. They had other family commitments. Paul DeLay here, Nancy James is here. This committee has worked very hard. We're all citizens, we're all taxpayers. What's been a great benefit to us and to our OPM and the town and Castle Booze is we've listened to you. We have absolutely listened to you, and we're going to continue, but we need to move this process along because that fire station is not going to last forever. And the chief, there may be other issues that you're going to have to face. So I always say, this has to get done. No question it has to be done. So we're going to continue the process to meet with you all and anyone that comes out. And please bring your neighbors, bring your friends. We need that.
And as far as more, particulars on how we're going to try to break through to more people, it's really hard. That's like the question you've asked is basically the fundamental conundrum facing municipal government across the United States. And I'm assuming most of the rest of the world, but I don't know that. People are drowned with noise today, right? Your phone has things popping up, being fed to you. There's just so much stuff. So we're trying to spread those efforts out. We're trying to be much more active on social media. We have a project dedicated page where every single thing is getting uploaded. We have a new website that is not on the town's existing web platform. Municipal websites are not famous for being user-friendly and exciting to navigate. They really prioritize putting the maximum amount of information out for transparency, but transparency and accessibility are not the same thing. So we now have a project-specific page that I would encourage everyone here to go to and to share with anyone, whether they support the project or not, just so that they can get the information about it. We also know that not everyone engages with getting information online, and so we've done things like the select board voting to include a summary and a heads up lots of decisions are coming in the tax bills that went out to every property paying taxes in Westwood, doing direct mailers to folks, which we've done before, we'll continue to do. And, just putting paper copies of things in places where people congregate and go, whether that's in Islington or at the Council on Aging or at the library. We're going to have to continue to do that. The most, in my view, on these projects, the most effective way for people to get tuned in and feel like it matters is for you folks here tonight to tell people in your lives, oh, this matters, right? I'm a guy in a suit that probably 15,900 people here don't know, but they know you, right? And they know you and they know the other folks here. And so when you take away from this meeting, hopefully we're all really trying hard that you folks walk away feeling like the town is really making a different and better effort now. But to let people know we are available, we will, as Ford said, if you contact, the committee has a direct email on that website, if you contact them, they'll go to your house if you want. We'll meet people where they are, we'll meet with them at town hall, we'll meet with them at the library, get coffee. We view the mission of getting information to people to be incredibly important. So, but you all have a part to play in that too. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's important an important point. Everyone on the committee has committed, like if you send us an email and say, I have 10 friends that are coming to my house Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, we'll come. And we'll spend 15 minutes and talk to you and answer your questions. The website that PMA put together is really great. It's a great place to see a quick summary, everything you could possibly know, all of the information, all of the future meetings, everything is on that website. So if you were going to encourage people to look at one thing, I would direct them to the website because it's really informative.
I've been alternating, but I wanted to see if the person over here has had a chance to speak yet tonight. I have not, no. Okay, so I'm going to have this person go ahead because I know that you've already had a chance.
Sure. Go ahead. Aaron Wyatt, 83 Pond Street. Couple questions for the chief. How do you feel about this reduced size, proposed reduced size? Do you feel that it's still going to be adequate for your staff? And then another follow-up to that was, does the new design also going to incorporate apparatus maintenance facility on-site, or will that still be something that has to be done off-site? And then there's a little bit of talk about wetlands at Deerfield, and my one concern is, like, if you've ever gone there to play a softball game, when you just walk across that field, it's just soaked, like, even if it hasn't rained. And so I just didn't know if in these designs there's going to be some sort of mitigation, I don't know, facility for that sort of standing water that's always there. And then my last question, or two more questions. One, do we think that we actually can get 2 or 3 more years out of the current FS1? And are we planning for an emergent, like, temporary facility that we may have to move, you know, the staff to if that building really becomes untenable? And this one is really, it's not particularly a helpful thing, but behind my property, there was a piece of property owned by the Westwood Cemetery that was sold and is now going to become, I think, you know, condos or something. Was that ever looked at as a piece of property to acquire right on 109? Thank you.
So I'll start with is it adequate? Yes, it is adequate for what we have today. And then if we grow a little bit, we will utilize more space at Station 2. And then 15, 20 years down the road, we'll have to see how much the town has grown and everything like that. But right now, it is adequate. And then you had another question from me. What was? Oh, we will have apparatus maintenance designed in this one. That's something that is vital. It just takes too long to get stuff fixed when you send it out. It really is.
Yeah, sure. You know, so I'll segregate wetlands, which are delineated wetlands by conservation requirements versus fields that may be holding water. As I spoke about earlier, those fields would be rebuilt. So rebuilding those fields, we would bring them up to a more modern standard, which would include some drainage below the fields that mitigates that kind of sogginess in the soil. And it's likely because of the soil actual conditions there, because they were likely wetlands at some point, right, that have been filled in. That kind of soil is going to capture the water. In terms of the rebuilding, that soil would be amended so it was more free draining and better to both play on, and then you know, subsequent to that, to handle the stormwater that is obviously a problem in that area.
Okay.
And then the last question was about if the current facility is going to make it to 2029, and if we have a plan.
Based on our kind of preliminary review, because this is a kind of a follow-on project, we didn't start at the original. From what we've seen, yes, it should get us there, and if not, we would have made that clear up front. Obviously, the apparatus bay is just not really feasible to use for apparatus anymore. That's not going to fix itself. I think that's you know, abundantly obvious. But the other facilities within the building, though you know, wholly inadequate for modern operations, are not physically failing the way that apparatus bay floor is, and you know, they're not up to modern decontamination standards, along with a host of other requirements that make their replacement, you know, necessary. There isn't anything that we've seen, at least, Chief, that causes us to shrink that timeline into the point where you need to do anything in the next 2 years.
Yeah, and if we were to go to temp op somewhere else, it would be way smaller than what we have now. So utilizing that right now is the least worst option.
All right, we have two people standing left to ask questions, and just in keeping with our policy of everyone getting a first turn before we have a second, have you had the chance to go, sir? Yeah. I haven't. Okay, I'll have you go, and then it'll be your turn. I'm going to have the person behind you go because they haven't had a turn yet.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, to the person at the microphone, the person behind you hasn't had a turn yet, so I'm going to have them go first, and then you'll be able to go for your second turn.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I know it's late. Anthony Mullen, 126 Pond Street. First of all, I'd like to thank the chief and his entire team. They've been great. Unfortunately, had a few calls over the years, and they've been great. So thanks to that. I'd like to thank this process. This process has been great and I think muchly improved. And of course, the FS1 committee as well for their tireless work. Though I will make a statement. Ultimately, I believe, Connor, if I'm right, this decision made by 3 people in this room, and so, which is select board, is that true?
What decision, could you clarify?
Is this decision, who decides the path forward on these options? Is it the
as far as
committee?
selecting a site?
Yes.
Yes, so the select board appointed the committee to do that work on their behalf, but in order to eliminate any question to that effect, the meeting on August 7th will be posted as a joint meeting where the committee will be making a recommendation and the select board will be there as well. Prior to the recommendation being made, to ask any outstanding questions they have of the committee that they appointed, and if they so choose to affirm that recommendation.
So this is a comment, Connor. As an elected official, to me, the buck stops with the select board. There were 3 people in this room who I both all supported, and as an elected official, my belief is they are ultimately accountable, not a committee of unappointed people. That's maybe my view. Excuse me, Connor, can I finish?
Sure.
So that's my view, and that's, to me, I just want to share that with the public. Ultimately, to me, the buck stops with the people who are elected in this room. Thank you.
We agree, and the board will be there for that purpose on the 7th.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Alice Smith, 78 Gay Street. I would just like to say that I think and support the rebuilding of the fire station in its current location. The Deerfield site may be the easiest from a construction perspective. It is not necessarily the best option for the town. The issue of flooding for this neighborhood, for the Deerfield neighborhood, is substantive. We have seen increases in flooding and increases in the amount of water in people's backyards, including my own, in the last 5 years or 3 years. And the fields were built quite a while ago, and they were equipped with under the field drainage pipes, storm basins, and the flooding has still continued to increase. The existing storm drains are undersized. They don't have the capacity to handle additional flows that are being proposed with the amount of impervious surface that this design will impose on the Deerfield site. And the water table is very high. So one of the questions I would like to ask is what rainfall database is being used to calculate the stormwater requirements for detention basins, et cetera, to manage any stormwater?
So at the portion of the project that we're at, no calculations have been made and wouldn't be made normally in a project like this at this time. The requirements don't change in terms of development for this project or any other project in town. The town's bylaws through its permitting processes, through planning board and subsequently or adjacently Conservation Commission determine those standards, and all projects, including this one, would have to abide by those standards. I'm an architect, not a civil engineer, to be fair, so I can't recite them off of my head now, but our team is required to do that, and I believe in Westwood, like many other communities, there is a required peer review that would be part of any process to make sure that the information represented by our team is independently verified by the town and a set of corresponding experts in that particular field to make sure that all adequate regulations are followed and the resulting design meets those requirements.
If I can comment, I understand that, but I also understand that the wetland regulations for stormwater currently only require that a database be used that has rainfall data only up until 1967. The Stormwater Handbook has been revised to cite a new stormwater a rainfall database, which has more current information and is more likely to accommodate issues related to climate change, although at a potential increased cost for sizing the stormwater system.
Okay, thank you. Nora, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add on the stormwater regs that we follow, but we appreciate the feedback.
So depending on the location that's selected, it will be determined whether this is reviewed under the stormwater management regulations or under the wetlands regulations. But if it's under the wetlands regulations, which it would be at either the Deerfield site or the 14131 site, if it's under the wetlands regulations, the Conservation Commission will still have its peer review or review the site in accordance with the stormwater management regulations.
Okay, the construction of a commercial or large-scale facility like the fire station would require stormwater review and design to manage. Whether, I don't know if what the town has adopted, since I haven't looked at the bylaws recently in terms of their stormwater requirements, but this project would require stormwater regardless of where it's sited.
It absolutely would. It's a question of how the approval would be issued, whether it would be an order of conditions under the local wetlands bylaw and the Wetlands Protection Act, or whether it would be an order of conditions under the stormwater management bylaw and regulations. But in any event, the Conservation Commission would have its peer reviewer look at the project using the standards that are set forth in our current stormwater regulations. Those are available on the website if you want to take a look at them. And they do have up-to-date modeling requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing anyone else with a question, I'll turn it over to Connor for closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you, especially those who stuck it out. We'll stick around down here for a little bit. If you have any questions that, as Danielle said, you perhaps didn't want to ask publicly, we're here. And again, please follow the process, share the website, take the survey, and if you could use the sticker survey in the lobby. And again, just thank you all so much for your time and your thoughtfulness. We appreciate it.